thank you for showing up at Spencer Morona's CTE awareness event.
Sure.
That was very nice of you.
Well, I know
I mean,
some of
you're
the people who have lost their lives to that disease, first of all. So I certainly would support any effort to cure that disease or to resolve the challenge of that disease. But I had seen Spencer. I exercise every day. That's how you can continue to be kind of functional at age 77. I was walking as I picked different parts of Seattle to walk in, and I was walking in West Seattle on the waterfront at Alki about 6 weeks ago. And as I'm walking, a name comes into my head, Spencer Morona. Here comes Spencer Morona walking in the opposite direction. So I say, Spencer, how are you?
His name came to you first?
His name came to me.
And then?
And then I said, Spencer, how you doing? And he said, Stan Chernicoff, which was great. We knew. And then we walked together for an hour. And during the course of that hour of just walking, total serendipity, we just saw each other and I remembered him. He told me about his project in CTE. And I said, as I've said to my 45,000 students, if you're doing something that's making this community better, I will be there. So tell me when it is, and I will be there. And then I saw Spencer at Coach Dick Baird's 80th birthday party.
Okay.
And I saw him and his life partner, Michelle, and I said, hey, I'm going to be at your thing on, I remember the date, June 10th, I guess, or whatever the date was. I'm going to be at your thing, look for me. And he was really pleased that not only did I follow through, but that his geology professor from 30 years ago continues to support his efforts, which I would have done when he was an undergraduate, and now I'm doing because this is what's important in his life.
That means a lot.
That's part of being in a community like this.
That it sure is. Now, real quick, your father was born in Russia and moved to New York?
My father was born in New York. His father was born in Russia.
Okay.
My grandmother was born in Russia.
Okay. And what did your father do, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the sad part about the story of my father was that he died when I was 12.
Okay.
So I lived without a father for most of my life.
Who pushed the academics on you? Or did anybody?
My neighborhood did, because I lived in a Brooklyn neighborhood and went to a high school that has probably 10 Nobel Prize winners. But more importantly, at my high school was Bernie Sanders, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Chuck Schumer, all these people who are now important players, and now Justice Ginsburg has left us. But I went to this amazing Brooklyn high school where if you were a slacker, you were ostracized. You had to pursue knowledge. You had to attempt to be learned. My father died when he was 41. My mother was a 38-year-old widow. And they didn't supervise me very well. He was gone, and she was a grieving widow. So she didn't know how to deal with a teenage boy anyway. My father, who was a great athlete, he and I interacted as athletes for a long time until he died. But he had a sister who lived on the next block. And she had books in her house. And most of the people in my family, no one went to college. I'm the first in my family to ever go to college, let alone get a PhD. And my aunt, she loved learning, but she was a high school graduate. And she took me under her wing and said, I will work with you if you want to learn, because I consider that the most important thing that adults can give to children. So I had an unsupervised New York life where I could have run wild wherever I wanted to. But instead, I ran to the Museum of Natural History. So as an 11-year-old, back in the day when parents didn't watch their kids as closely, my mother would give me $1 and I would buy a token and I would get spaghetti and meat sauce at the cafeteria and spend the entire day at the Museum of Natural History. I mean, New York City is this opportunity to learn if you're receptive.
How would you get there? You take the light rail or the...
I take the subway.
You take the subway.
You know, so you had to know the subway system. Mm-hmm. You know, and I had a couple of friends who would also go with me because they and their families promoted and supported and extolled learning. So they would, you know, we'd all go and we would walk around the dinosaur hall and do all of those types of things as kids. So somehow my neighborhood nurtured me. But then I slipped off track when I started college. When I started college, the Vietnam War was taking place. And all I wanted to do was not go to war. So I wanted to have a 2S deferment, which is if you were in college, they didn't send you to Vietnam. So I had to maintain a passing grade in all my classes so that I didn't fall into probation or get kicked out of the college. Because if I got kicked out of college, I was going to the Army.
Now, I can only imagine if your parents were with us in 2000, I believe. Was your mother gone also? When did she go to heaven?
She didn't go until 2016. And
so she was alive when you received the Distinguished Teaching Award.
Oh, she was there. That
must have been amazing for her.
Especially given
the circumstances.
Our family history.
Sure.
And the fact that she knew that I was self-taught. She knew that I had raised myself. But she tried her best. And she tried, you know, I have an image of her having a football catch with me. My father was gone. She tried to be both parents. And she was a pretty good athlete, actually. So she and I would have a football catch. And I remember laughing a little bit to myself, like, not a lot of my friends are having a football catch with their mothers. And I loved her dearly. And I'll share a moment which came almost at the end of her life. When I was overseeing the University of Washington Dream Project, which was a project that had 700 UW undergraduates driving off in vans to campuses, 16 high schools in the Seattle area, to help students from underrepresented families navigate their way to college by helping them figure out the financial aid issue, write their college essay, prepare for SATs or ACTs. We created this program to help kids in the Seattle area who ordinarily would not have had much of an opportunity join other kids who looked like them at the university.
So let me interrupt you real quick.
Go ahead.
During this program, when you knew a kid that thought he would never be on the University of Washington campus, and then you saw him on campus, how did that make you feel?
Probably as good as anything that I ever did.
Probably the same as your mother.
It's probably the same as how my mother was surprised by my success. Mm-hmm. So we had a scholarship program for the Dream Project, and some donors in Seattle were really attracted to these wonderful UW undergraduates helping high school kids build a life. So one night we had a fundraiser and we raised over $200,000. This is a student program. This is a club that raised $200,000. And at that event, because I was their faculty supervisor, they gave me a bouquet of flowers to show their love and appreciation for my support of them. And there was my mother sitting in the 12th row, glowing with pride. And I don't know what prompted me to do this, but I walked from the stage with the flowers and gave them to her as an acknowledgement of her sticking with me through really difficult times.
What a great memory.
There wasn't a dry eye in the place. And to have that opportunity and to have that remain as a memory returns to your earlier question of, what do you do when you're depressed? I think of moments like that. You know, I try to impart to students the importance of making memories. Because at the end of the day, no one really cares that much about the car you drive. They may be jealous as much as anything else. And I've had kids, and now I have grandkids, and I am completely dedicated to making memories for them. Because pretty much it's all we have. The stuff we buy, it breaks, or it falls apart, or we get bored with it. The memories we have, they're indelible. And they make our life rich, and if you don't have memories that just make you swell either with pride or with joy or with laughter, all the money you've got really doesn't add up to that much. It's really hard to convince people who are so focused on material success that that's not the end all when you get to 77, because no one cares that much about that.
So, shifting a little bit more towards geological dangers. What should we know about that? You know, for the average Seattle resident, what are the big risks? I mean, is it earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, tsunamis?
Well, it's not volcanoes.
Okay.
Because if you went out in the backyard with a shovel and you dug in your backyard, you would find in the city of Seattle no evidence of volcanism. Because when a volcano erupts, volcanic particles go in the atmosphere, land on the ground, and accumulate. But there are none in Seattle. But if you go south of Seattle to Renton, to Auburn,
Not far,
50 miles from here, 30 miles from here, those communities are built directly on top of massive mud flows that have flowed off of Mount Rainier very recently. 5,000 years ago for a geologist is really recent.
So is it safe to say that this 1898 red brick building is safer than most buildings down south?
Unfortunately, if you recall, and I don't know if you were walking around Pioneer Square at that
I don't
time,
think I'm going to like this.
we had an earthquake on February 28th of 2001.
Okay.
Go online and look at pictures of Pioneer Square, and you will see all of this beautiful brick was down on the ground. Most of the buildings of Pioneer Square were damaged or destroyed during that earthquake because we haven't retrofitted those buildings. You've got cement between the bricks. It's old. It's corroding. It needs to be tuck pointed. It needs to be refreshed. I'm looking around. One of the things that I've done for years is when anyone asks me, I'll go into their house and earthquake-proof the house. Let me see where you sleep. Let me see, because in the middle of the night.
So my next question was, what every Seattle household should have, but it's going to be more about where you sleep.
Well, you don't want to have some giant, wonderful painting or poster with a heavy glass frame sitting immediately above your head.
Now, just FYI, we are getting retrofitted. We've already paid for it as soon as the World Cup is over. So I don't want to discourage any of my guests.
Well, that's great. The problem is we can't predict when the next earthquake. Seattle will have, and I hate to say it in these terms, but it's absolutely true. Seattle will have a life-taking earthquake. There is no doubt. Seattle will have a life-taking earthquake. Whether it's 10 people die or 10,000 people die, Seattle will have an earthquake of that magnitude. We live in an area that produces that. That's why our scenery is as great as it is. We would have no Olympic mountains, we would have no Mount Rainier, we would have no Cascades if it weren't for the process that produces earthquakes. You should have an earthquake kit.
Which is what?
Go online and look to see what should be in an earthquake kit.
Okay.
So you live in an apartment. You live on the second floor. How are you getting out of this building when it begins to shake violently? You need to have a ladder, one of those rope ladders or steel ladders that you could throw out of this window and get out of this building.
I'll get one.
And at the foot of this, or maybe somewhere in the lobby in some way that you can secure it, you need to have whatever you think you will need to live for a minimum of 72 hours. Because all the services that we come accustomed to will not be available to us for at least 72 hours.
No worries about tsunamis?
We've had tsunamis here.
We have.
In Puget Sound.
So that is a concern.
They have risen as high as 20 to 30 feet. You should know your elevation. And you should know, well, fortunately, all you have to do is run up Seneca or Spring, because that's well above the height that we have had historical tsunami. Landslides is the biggest problem in this area. And you're fortunate in a way that we had the earthquake of 2001, because having that earthquake compromised and damaged the Alaskan Way Viaduct, the road that sits along the waterfront. So we took it down and built a park in its place. But we also built, at a cost of $400 million, a new seawall that holds the city of Seattle in place. Because had we not built that seawall during the next earthquake, this building would slide into Elliott Bay. The entire building, the entire surface from this hill would have slid into Elliott Bay because the seawall was inadequate. It was built in the 1800s by people throwing wood and people throwing concrete to hold the city back in place. Now we've built an engineered seawall that's going to hold the city in place.
That's great news.
That's good news. But that doesn't help you during the earthquake when you need to get the hell out of this window.
And go straight up.
Straight up, go down the ladder and straight up the hill.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, you spent 7 years as an associate athletic director overseeing academics for 750 student athletes, 23 sports. What did that role teach you?
Well, it taught me that even though we're at a university with 40,000 students, every student should be seen as an individual, and their success at the university should be supported by the university. The student athlete, because we've given them a scholarship, and there's all sorts of rules that are associated with those scholarships, that they have to maintain their eligibility, they have to work towards a legitimate major, they have to complete a certain number of credits every semester if they want to be eligible to play, practice, or travel. All of that led us, and it led one person, a woman named Gertrude Peoples, to be the founder of the support programs that helped student athletes achieve some academic success. The student athlete takes 20 hours, that's by NCAA measure. They usually exceed that by a significant amount, to hit the weight room, practice, play, study for the next game, be in meetings with their coaches, and they're exhausted at the end of the day. So student athletes at universities like this receive support in the form of tutoring and extra opportunities to learn the material that the average student has more time to study than they do, because they're involved in their athletic responsibilities, and if you have a scholarship, those are responsibilities. You don't keep your scholarship.
And those are exhausting activities.
And they're exhausting. The end of the day, it's 11 o'clock at night, all you want to do is sleep, your body's been beaten up by athletics. Other students are in the library studying, but you're not. So we had a program to support, and we still have that program, and we were the first in the nation to produce one of these programs, and that's Gertrude Peoples. Gertrude was responsible for creating the first student athlete support program. I worked there for 7 years and saw how robust that program was. how supportive it was. But that was for 750 of the university's undergraduates, not for the other 40,000 undergraduates. Mm-hmm. So one day I went to the dean and I said, I want to give to the rest of the students what our student athletes receive in the form of support. And therein came the origin of the CLUE program, which is the late night study program covering dozens and dozens of different elements, different courses, so that students who are having some difficulty getting their biology homework done can sit at a table in Mary Gates Hall with a whole bunch of other students who are studying the same thing, but have a graduate student sitting at that table in biology saying, I'm not giving you the answer, but I'm going to teach you some of the principles, and then together we'll navigate our way to the answers that you need to complete your project. Student athletes receive that sort of support. The rest of the students didn't. Well, I created the CLUE program, and that leveled the playing field. Not that I needed to do that necessarily, because the student athlete, and this is something that I could talk about ad nauseum, they come to the university having been a great athlete in high school.
Okay.
They were world class to come to a place like this in track or in some sport, tennis. They arrive here and they go into a classroom. They're sitting between two power centers. The professor, who is telling them, look at the syllabus, you'll be sitting in that seat on Thursday afternoon, week 6, taking the midterm. The other power center is the head coach, who gave them a scholarship. And that coach is saying, you'll be on the plane going to play Ohio State. That Thursday, we're leaving, so you can't go to class that day.
Or Friday.
Or Friday, because we're going to be in Columbus, Ohio. What does an 18-year-old kid who's a world-class athlete decide to do when two people are telling them you'll be in one place, but you're separated by 1,800 miles? You'll go where your coach tells you because you want to play, because that's part of your identity.
Scholarship.
And it requires you to do so because you're on scholarship. You couldn't come to the university without it. Mm-hmm. I had to find solutions, and the solutions involved partnerships between the professors and the coaches to realize they're both teaching the students, and they have to support them together. So the student athlete under my watch was able to take their classes or take their exams on the road because the professors trusted that the coaches would make sure that everything was legitimate when a student was taking an exam hundreds of miles away from the classroom. Student athletes come to a place like this, they are sitting in a class next to the valedictorian from Lakeside High School, the best high school in Seattle. And they're asked to compete one-on-one academically with someone who puts all of their time and all of their effort and was born and bred to be a spectacular student. They, on the other hand, are a spectacular athlete. And there's tension in a classroom when the students, who are not student athletes, look at the athletes walking into class head to toe covered in brand new purple clothing. And they think, well, look at that guy, he's trying to be so cool, he can manage anything he wants to. Now they're making millions of dollars on top of it. Won't get into that. But the fact remains, I will say to the scholars in the class, you are great at studying. You are great at learning. They are great, we hope, at studying and learning, but we know they're really great at athletics. How would you like on Saturday, if I put you in a uniform, we're playing Notre Dame, and we're going to put you in at running back for a series and hand you the ball? How would you do on their playing field? Would you survive? Could you take a hit? They'd acknowledge that they wouldn't succeed in the world of athletics at this level, But we're asking the student athlete to succeed in the world of academics at this level. So there has to be a more intelligent approach. And that's what I spent my 7 years trying to figure out. If a university wants to have sports, and it's kind of like a professional sports program embedded in a college, if we choose to have it, how do we do it better than everybody else? And how do we make sure that the poor student athlete isn't caught between these two powerful people tugging them in opposite directions? And how do we ensure that that student athlete who doesn't realize they're not going to the NFL, the NBA, because only 3% of people who play college athletics end up making a penny from that sport. 97% get a college degree and they become doctors and lawyers and real estate agents and teachers, own their own businesses. That's how they succeed. The scholarship helped them get there. I have to make sure that they get a major, they complete that major is interesting to them and not just the easiest major they can find. So that's what I did for those 7 years. And thinking of everyone as I was their parent. And I was part of the recruiting process. Because I was a professor on campus, so it was easy for me to say to the parents who would come on a 48-hour recruiting visit, I am going to watch out for your kid because you're back in California and you can't watch your kid. But you can call me on Sunday night and ask me, did my kid go to class? And how's my kid doing in school this quarter? Because it's very important to most of these families. The kid is the first in their family to go to college. So there was a lot of that going on.
So as a former Husky player, and I know how much the people focus on wins and losses,
Sure.
But from your seat, you might have just answered it, but what was a real victory for you regarding the student athlete?
The real victory was we scored more than the other team, especially if it was Oregon.
Sure.
But the fact remains, I am, this fall, a 46-year season ticket holder. 46 consecutive years I have sat in Husky Stadium. I'm a football fan, but I was also a baseball fan and a softball fan, and because I was going to watch my students succeed in the things that they were the most passionate about, in exchange for them being passionate about what I was trying to teach them. So I want to win the football game. There's no doubt about it. But my favorite day of the year will come up in 2 days. Is graduation day. The hugs that we as faculty get on the stage wearing our silly robes of our students coming up and thanking us for helping them get there is a better feeling, I hate to say this, than beating Oregon.
That's a tough.